scientific truths in the Qur'an introduction, and it was not possible for this Qur'an to be produced by other than God. There is no doubt it is from the Lord of the worlds. Quran 10:37. The miraculous nature of the Quran lies in the knowledge it contains in. This is an everlasting, renewable and a living proof. The Quran was given to mankind more than 14 centuries ago. Recent advancements in various sciences have revealed innumerable facts. None of these discoveries contradict a single verse of the Quran. In fact, each time the world makes a breakthrough in unraveling the universe, we increase in certainty that the one who created this universe is the one who revealed the Quran. It is filled with important facts which were revealed at a point in human history when no man could possibly have known them. The Quran speaks about the origins of the universe, workings of celestial bodies, stages of embryonic human development, behavioral patterns of species, historical and archaeological truths, etc. A miracle is a divine act which defies and transcends universal laws which God grants to the prophets in order to convince people of the truth of their message. The Quran uses the word Ayat, literally meaning sign, to describe this phenomenon. These divine miracles are designed to provide people with the capacity to perceive them as signs of God's power, knowledge and will over all things in the universe. For a miracle to have full impact, it should relate to an area of knowledge in which its intended audience are well versed. In this way can a miracle fulfill its purpose. Historically, every prophet was given miracles, and these were witnessed by their respective contemporaries. The Prophet Muhammad is unique in the chain of prophethood, for unlike all previous prophets, he was sent as God's final prophet and messenger for all mankind. Reason demands, therefore, that he should have a universal miracle that is not bound by time or geographical considerations. Every individual at every stage of human history, no matter where he lived in the world, is hence justified in saying, if Muhammad is a prophet for me today, I would like to behold a miracle today. Unlike the tangible miracles, an example being the splitting of the sea of the previous prophets, the main miracle of the Prophet Muhammad, although he was given other miracles, was an intellectual miracle. The effectiveness of the tangible miracles would have their greatest impact on eyewitnesses, and their full impact would end with the death of these witnesses. If we ask a Jew or Christian to show us the miracles of the Prophet Moses or Jesus, they both would submit that it is not within human power to demonstrate any of those miracles. Now, Moses cannot be asked to split the sea again, and the Prophet Jesus cannot be called to raise people from the dead. For us today, these miracles are nothing more than historical reports. But if a Muslim is asked about the greatest miracle of the Prophet Muhammad, he can readily show his book, the Qur'an, for the Qur'an is a miracle which remains in our hands. It is a book for all people to examine its contents. Non-believers will naturally seek an explanation as to the source of knowledge of the Qur'an. Atheists would argue that the Qur'an was the product of intellectual ramblings of the Prophet Muhammad, and the Jews and Christians would say that it was plagiarized from the Old and New Testament. The fact is that such statements do not belong to the period when the Quran was revealed, and no such statements exist in the Old and New Testament. It is obvious that no one man could possess the diversity of the knowledge that is contained in the Quran. One could conceivably be lucky with a few guesses, but the variety and quality of accurate knowledge in the Quran shows without doubt these are not the words of a mere mortal. No human being has ever written a comprehensive book with such absolute perfection and certainty of knowledge. Every book represents the knowledge available to a writer at a certain time and place, and human knowledge keeps advancing. As a result, every book written by a human being becomes obsolete after some time, because the information is found to be either false or incomplete, raising the need for books to be revised or rewritten. The writings of every physicist, scientist, biologist, or philosopher have proved this to be the case. The Quran contains over 6,000 ayat verses with over 70,000 words, yet it is a fact that not a single word, phrase, sentence or topic needs to be revised. It is also the case that a writer usually has knowledge of a specific subject or a few related subjects. For example, one can write about history, or economics or philosophy or physics, etc. But it is not possible for a human being to write simultaneously on a great variety of different subjects with such in-depth and accurate information. Even a casual reader finds that the Quran discusses an array of subjects with the accuracy and precision to make them appear to be the observations of an eyewitness expert. Can the Quran contain scientific errors? It must be clearly understood that the Quran is not a book of science, philosophy, geology, or history. It is a revelation from God for the purpose of guiding mankind. Nonetheless, if any expert from the various fields of knowledge analyzed what the Quran states, they would conclude that the Quran, beyond doubt, is not authored by a man in the 7th century. If what the Quran imparted was unfounded, science would, in time, have proved its falsehood and the whole religion would have been destroyed. Every scientific theory from the historic past that contradicted the Quran has been proven to be unfounded and lacking empirical evidence. On the contrary, every established scientific fact has consistently been in complete agreement with the Quran. As true science is as divine as the Quran, it is impossible that there exist a contradiction between an action of God and His Word. There exists a plethora of online literature written by people, many with vested interests, attempting to refute the facts that exist in the Quran. Some of these writings are based on misconceptions, or are academically dishonest, and in some cases contain blatant lies. It was for this reason that the corresponding Arabic text was also included for the verses of the Quran quoted. Therefore, everyone is welcome to analyze and study the exact words spoken by God and assess and judge for themselves if the Quran is indeed from Him, the Creator, or is authored by someone who lived over 1400 years ago. There are now a number of authoritative Arabic dictionaries that have been translated into the English language, should you wish to research the words used in the Quran. Final note: we all have a monumental task of trying to understand who we really are as individuals and what is the purpose of our existence. The journey to ascertain the truth can only be achieved by those who take their lives seriously. God tells us in the Quran that the majority of people follow mere conjecture and assumptions, and not facts. One of the regrets of the people of hell will be that they did not adequately use their intellects. We ask you to look at the contents of this book with a critical eye. One should investigate the points being made with a fundamental intention of determining its accuracy and being prepared for the consequences it presents. If what God describes of the world we can physically observe to be 100% true, then what He describes of what we cannot physically see, like the approaching judgment of every human on the day of resurrection, the punishments of hell, and the eternal bliss of paradise, is just as true. Finally, for each successive generation, the Quran offers new and relevant meanings, proportionate to the development of knowledge and growth of that generation's intellectual aptitude. In other words, they are applicable to the constantly developing perceptions of the human race, expanding in meaning as man's exploration of the universe and his search for knowledge about his life and existence increases. From this we see that the Quran was not intended solely for one people or nation, but came for the benefit and guidance of all, a complete and comprehensive religion, providing knowledge for all the generations. If these teachings were limited to one century or generation, the everlasting objective of the Quran would have long since diminished. Yet the Quran is constantly regenerating new meaning, providing a continual source of guidance, Quranic integrity and scientific advancement. And who is more truthful than God in His words? Quran 4-122. The Big Bang Theory. Historic preamble. The enormously vast universe has been the object of curiosity since time immemorial. Greek philosophers, including Aristotle, believed that the universe had always existed and would continue to do so eternally. This was also the mainstream view in scientific circles at the beginning of the 20th century, aptly known as the steady-state theory. An eternal state of the universe meant that there was no inherent need for a creator, for what does not have a beginning does not necessitate a need for a cause. However, advancements in science would shatter this view and fundamentally prove that the universe had a beginning. In 1922, physicist Alexander Friedmann produced computations showing that the structure of the universe was not static and that even a tiny impulse might be sufficient to cause the whole structure to expand or contract. According to Einstein's theory of general relativity, Georges Lemaitre was the first to recognize the implications of what Friedmann concluded. Lemaitre formulated that the universe had begun in a cataclysmic explosion of a small, primeval atom. He also proposed that the amount of cosmic radiation are the leftover remnants of the initial explosion. The theoretical musings of these two scientists did not attract much attention and probably would have gone ignored except for new observational evidence that rocked the scientific world in 1929. That year, American astronomer Edwin Hubble made one of the most important discoveries in the history of astronomy. He discovered that galaxies were moving away from us at speeds directly relative to their distance from us and from each other. A universe where everything constantly moves away from everything else implied a constantly expanding universe. Stephen Hawking writes, the expansion of the universe was one of the most important intellectual discoveries of the 20th century, or of any century. Since the universe is constantly expanding, were we to rewind a film of its history, then necessarily we would find the entire universe was in a joint state, referred to by some as the primordial atom. Many scientists and philosophers resisted the idea of a beginning to the universe because of the many questions that it raised, primarily what or who caused it. However, with Penzias and Wilson's discovery of microwave radiation emanating from all directions possessing the same physical characteristics, namely petrified light, which came from a huge explosion during the first seconds after the birth of the universe, left little doubt about the fact that the universe had a beginning. For 1400 years, since the revelation of the Qur'an, skeptics had trouble understanding the verse, "The heavens and the earth were of joined entity and we separated them." 2130. However, with the assistance of scientific advancements, we can now understand these verses in a new light which help us piece together the cosmological puzzle. The miraculous nature of the Quran lies in the knowledge it contains. Its verification of scientific facts shows that its message is as applicable to the scientist in his laboratory today as it was to the Bedouin in the desert. Have those who believed not considered that the heavens and the earth were of ratq joined entity, and we pataka separated them, then will they not believe? Quran 2130. The word ratq, translated as sewn to, means mixed in, each blended. In Arabic, it is used to refer to two different substances that make up a whole. The phrase pataka is unstitched and implies that something comes into being by tearing apart or destroying the structure of things that are sewn to one another. In the verse, heaven and earth are at first subject to the status of ratq. They are separated, pataka, with one coming out of the other. Intriguingly, when we think about the first moments of the Big Bang, we see that the entire matter of the universe collected at one single point. In other words, everything, including the heavens and earth, which were not created yet, were in an interwoven and inseparable condition. Then, this point exploded violently, causing its matter to disunite, and the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed, we are its expander. Quran 51-47. It was only after the development of the radio telescope in 1937 that the expansion of the universe was observed and established. This discovery is regarded as one of the greatest in the history of astronomy. During these observations, Hubble established that the stars emit a light that turns redder according to their distance. The wavelengths of receding bodies prolonged in the spectrum of light waves would shift to red, while if the bodies approached each other, the wavelengths would shorten, shifting to blue. The light that came from galaxies that shifted to red showed that the galaxies were receding. In line with this observation, Hubble discovered a striking law. The speed of galaxies that receded was directly proportional to the distance between galaxies. The farther away a galaxy stood, the more its speed of recession accelerated. The result was tested again and again. In short, galaxies were moving further and further away all the time. A universe where everything constantly moves away from everything else implied a constantly expanding universe. The debate now is not whether the universe is expanding but rather at what rate. In 2011, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to 3 scientists for the discovery of the accelerating expansion of the universe through observations of distant supernovae. Early universe in a state of smoke. The science of modern cosmology, observational and theoretical, clearly indicates that, at one point in time, the whole universe was nothing but a cloud of smoke, i.e. an opaque, highly dense and hot gaseous composition. This is one of the undisputed principles of standard modern cosmology. Scientists now can observe new stars forming out of the remnants of that smoke. The illuminating stars we see at night were, just as was the whole universe, in that smoke material. God has said in the Qur'an, "Then he directed himself to the heaven while it was smoke." Quran 41-11. Because the earth and the heavens above the sun, the moon, stars, planets, galaxies, etc., have been formed from this same smoke, we conclude that the earth and the heavens were one connected entity. We know that our world, the sun, and the stars did not come about immediately after the primeval explosion. For the universe was in a gaseous state before the formation of the stars. This gaseous state was initially made of hydrogen and helium. Condensation and compression shaped the planets, the earth, the sun and the stars that were but products of the gaseous state. The discovery of these phenomena has been rendered possible thanks to successive findings as a result of observations and theoretical developments. The knowledge of all contemporary communities during the time of the Prophet would not suffice for the assertion that the universe had once been in a gaseous state. The Prophet himself did not claim to be the author of the statements in the Quran, as it often reminded, declaring that he is simply a messenger of God. That is from the news of the unseen, which we reveal to you, O Muhammad. You knew it not, neither you nor your people, before this. So, be patient. Indeed, the best outcome is for the righteous. Quran 11:49.